10 days down in Iowa.
I'll now call this meeting to order. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the final agenda.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second. Nope, that was fast.
Excellent. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion does carry. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from the November 15th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt or to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 15th meeting.
Very good. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion does carry. Our first item of business, which is probably the one that most of you are here for, is the sketch plat review for the Leuthner property proposed by Roers Companies. The sketch plat review is the initial stage of review that the Planning Commission reviews and regarding development proposals. This serves as a starting point for discussion and review regarding development proposals. There is no formal action or recommendations taken by the Planning Commission at the time of the sketch plat review. The sketch plat review process is intended for the applicant to receive initial feedback from the Planning Commission and the City Council in advance of any necessary preliminary plat or rezoning applications. Does all that make any sense?
Crystal clear.
We'll get to that. Yep, we'll get to that. I will now turn it over to Nathan First, planning consultant with Bolton and Mink for staff presentation. Nathan, thank you.
Thank you. Hello and good evening, everyone, Chair and members of the Commission. So the first item on our agenda this evening is a sketch plat review for the Leuthner property. This is a submittal by Roers Companies, the developer. So as a reminder, the Chair stated that the applicant has submitted for a sketch plat review. This process is simply to provide feedback to applicants. There are no formal approvals or anything of that nature granted this evening by the Commission, simply providing some, again, feedback to the applicant. Really, this process, again, is intended to guide and assist the applicant with any subsequent applications, which in this case could include preliminary plat, conditional use permit, planned unit development, a number of different applications. I should also note that there were a number of property owners that are within 350 feet of the subject property that were notified and invited to participate in a neighborhood meeting that was held earlier this month. So there have been previous engagement opportunities for this project. So a little bit about the project. Up on the screen, you'll see the location for this site. And this site consists of 7 existing parcels. These parcels would be combined legally, and then the site redeveloped for what has been submitted to the city for review. I should also note that there's some right-of-way that's unused that would be vacated and included as part of this project area. In total, you're looking at just south of 3 acres when it's all combined. And the site here would have a number of different uses within that structure. This is referred to as a mixed-use development. So it would have 149 apartment dwellings as proposed, 4,500 square feet of commercial space, and 262 parking spaces. Those parking spaces, we'll talk about a lot more of the sort of the aspects of this development. Those parking spaces would be mixed between underground parking and surface parking and on-street parking. So what are the existing conditions on this site? I'm sure most of the folks in this room are pretty familiar with it. There is significant grade change, I would note, from the sort of the southeast to the northwest part of the site, really as you get down to that trail. you start to drop in elevation. There are some wooded areas that are present sort of near the northern property boundary that are along the trail. There are a number of different existing structures on the site. As part of this project, they would all be removed. Those include houses, outbuildings, a barn, gravel drives, parking area, etc. And then I should also note that in their narrative, the applicant has noted that there is an ongoing review for any required environmental remediation on the site. So more information hopefully to come there. So what does the city's comprehensive plan say about the site? You can see a very fuzzy picture on your screen. Sorry, I didn't have enough time to find a finer definition image, but the site is guided for downtown mixed use. And the guidance in the comprehensive plan for this area is towards smaller scale retail or office buildings mixed with vertical mixed use buildings with retail or office uses on the ground floor and other uses, which could include residential on the upper floors of those buildings. So I should also note that, and I did also note in the staff report, that the comprehensive plan has some specific language regarding gateways in the community along Highway 5 and other really high traffic volume corridors. And I'll just read verbatim here off the slide. These higher profile commercial nodes should be designed with an enduring architectural character, quality landscaping, and site design that presents buildings or site amenities as the focal point. Design considerations should be sensitive to neighborhood aesthetics and transitions through landscape features, pedestrian connections, and strategic lighting that preserves a dark sky and focuses lights on where it is intended to be lit. So that's a little bit about what the comp plan has to say about the future guidance for this area in particular and just similar areas in the city. Moving on to the city's zoning code. Specific to the zoning of this site, you're looking at a central business district zoning designation that's consistent with the rest of the properties in the downtown area. The proposed commercial use and the height of the proposed building would require a conditional use permit as they're over 35 feet in height. I should note that commercial uses are permitted by right, which means that they're allowed to be established without having to go through any special approvals. There is a shoreland overlay designation for this site and the rest of downtown, so I would note that. It's been noted elsewhere in the staff report and the review on the site. And lastly, the development could be considered as a planned unit development, which allows greater flexibility to some of those zoning standards that you have in the zoning districts there. So cutting to the chase, you can see a rendering on the screen that was provided by the applicant of the project. This is a rendering from the intersection of Rose Street and Highway 5. So you're looking at what would be apartment amenities on the ground floor there. And we'll walk through a number of different, again, review and components of this site. So looking at the concept site plan just for residential, there are 4 floors that are in the proposed building. And as noted, 149 apartment units are proposed. There are different units within the building. Those would consist of alcove, or kind of what you might refer to as like a studio or efficiency type unit, 1 bedroom plus, 2 and 3 bedroom units. There are amenities, again, on the corner of Rose and Arboretum or Highway 5. On the ground floor of the building along Rose Street, there is that commercial that we talked about, 4,500 square feet. There's proposed 2 floors of structured parking to serve the residential uses, an internal surface parking lot, and parking that is proposed on Rose Street. And here on the screen is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. You can see, again, you've got parking internal to the site. There's 1 access to that internal parking and the parking that would go into the building. That is located off of Rose Street, and it's right across from an access to city parking lot. I'm just going to walk through some of the different cutouts of the building. So we're looking at, on the left of the screen here, the underground parking on the very bottom floor. It's the garage floor plan. On the first floor, you can see it's a mix of structure parking and residential units, along with the retail on Rose Street and the apartment amenities on that corner. Those apartment amenities would include a club room for those residents, fitness center, and lobby. And then as we go up in the building, you can see on the second and third floors, you've got residential units throughout. And then on the fourth floor, you have residential units with the exception of the roof deck, which is near that intersection of Rose and Highway 5. The purpose of that roof deck is twofold. It serves as an amenity to the residents, but it's also a way for the developer to step back the building a little bit from that intersection and reduce the feel or the massing of the structure at that location. And I should also note before I move on to this slide here that the developer and his team are here this evening. They have prepared some information for you. So if you have questions specific to the design of the building or other concerns, I'm sure they'd be happy to address them after I finish up here. So the concept plan, looking at it from a commercial point of view, again, 4,500 square feet of that commercial space would be located on Rose, activating Rose Street within downtown with retail uses, most likely. Commercials tenants have not been found or proposed rather to the city at this time. It's anticipated that there would be space for 1 to 2 tenants. At least that's my review. I'm sure the developer may have ideas for how much space in there and what types of tenants. And then I should also just mention that the city's comprehensive plan really does strive to have commercial in these mixed-use projects to help activate the street in the downtown and kind of retain and further the vibrancy that folks experience in downtown Victoria. So zoomed way in, you can see this is a rendering of what that retail space on Rose Street would look like. You can see some of the darker building materials, similar to some of those buildings in downtown Victoria. And again, stepping back the mass of the building back from the retail facade. Looking at the building material and design specifically, I have a couple of notes for you. And these are also, all of this was included in the staff report. Material and colors that are used on the building do present for a variety of different styles and color. As noted, the articulation, including some of that step back, does help to break up the building and reduce the massing or the feel of how big it is, especially at that intersection of Rose and Arboretum. Ground level treatment does include a lot of windows, which helps to create a lot of interaction between residents and the structure and just the feel on the street. And lastly, I would just note that there are a mix of different materials proposed on the facades here. You're seeing brick, lap siding, EIFS, and metal materials. This slide just has a number of different renderings, again, provided by the applicant here, showing you different angles of the building. Let's talk about access for a second. So there is one access to the site. We did work with the city engineer and the fire chief to make sure that we're providing appropriate comments to the applicant. Specific to the one access and providing emergency vehicle access, there are clearance requirements for those vehicles to serve the site, so emergency vehicles can get under. I'll note that there is, you can see basically a bridge. The building kind of goes over the access, so that would have to be at least 13.5 feet tall. And then a focus on making sure that the fire apparatus can actually turn into this site with the proposed design. I would also note that there are some internal circulation to the site, primarily using walkways and drives. Okay, so one really important part of this review is the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. I pulled out an image from the city's comprehensive plan. You can see the site is located right along this regional trail, and there are a lot of opportunities that come with that location. And I would just note that there are future plans, at least in this image and in the adopted plan, to have a trail extend into what will become the downtown west area. And so this might be an important site from a trail connectivity point of view to kind of continue to strengthen the city's trail system and the connectivity of sites downtown to that trail. Lastly, or not lastly, but parking. This is obviously an important point of this review and something that I would expect the Planning Commission has questions or discusses tonight. Parking count was provided by the developer. You can see that on the left here. It kind of breaks down the parking provided. Apartment surface lot parking, there are 76 stalls that are on that internal surface lot. The structured parking, which is the stuff inside and on the ground floor and lower, there are 149 stalls. So in total, there's 225 stalls to serve those 149 units of housing. There are also stalls that are proposed on Rose Street that do not exist currently. So the developer is actually proposing to move Rose Street a little bit to the west to enable inclusion of parking on both sides of Rose Street. That would be 90-degree angle parking. There are 37 stalls that are proposed in the plans. So as noted, yeah, 37 stalls. There may be some that end up getting, some fine-tuning revisions that would, if this development were to move forward, we would want to look at. I would just also note that those stalls on Rose Street would serve that retail use in the building, and so the future tenants of the building would be limited to those uses that don't demand more parking than 37 stalls of space. Just to note, those types of uses that could be included: retail, office, medical, dental, financial uses, perhaps showrooms, things like that. Okay, so this is just a really brief summary of some of the things that we heard at the neighborhood meeting. A lot of discussion on parking requirements, the needs of the commercial space, concern for the mass of the building, questions about tree removal, questions about unit sizes and rents, questions about traffic impacts. As staff, we've obviously provided some review here. I would note that there is, again, no action required with the sketch plat review. However, a discussion is definitely encouraged to provide the applicant with feedback on a number of different parts of this development or the proposed development. Those include the mass or the mass of the structure, the design, parking, trail and streetscape, and then conformance overall with the zoning and comprehensive plans intent for this area. So that is what I have prepared for you as staff. I would again note that your developer is here this evening with the ability to provide you with information on the development. I've got just the site plan here and rendering up as kind of something that we can reference as needed. Otherwise, I do know that the developer has a presentation prepared with a lot of the same information here for you. So happy to stand for questions or happy to throw it over to the developer at this time.
Very good. Thank you very much, Nathan. Very, very nice, detailed presentation. And we do have the developer. You wanna jump in now, Marty? Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. That was a really good summary. My name's Marty McCarthy. I'm with Roers Companies. Do I have to give the address of the company? 2 Carlson Parkway, Plymouth, Minnesota, 55447. I think I've done that before in other meetings. And I'm here with our design team, Momentum Design Team. Jeff Reedy's here for any questions involving the design of the project. Do you want to maybe go to the next screen? I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of the project, or the company, Roers Companies, and then give you kind of a summary of what we've been working on for the last couple months with the city, with the working with the business group and some of the community members. So Roers Companies was founded in Minnesota in 2012 by Kent and Brian Roers. We have quickly grown over the last 10 years and are now in a dozen states throughout the country, with our primary focus having been in Minnesota. Kent and Brian started building in the Bakken oil region when the oil boom occurred, and then have transitioned their focus over the last 8 years in the suburban apartment market in the Twin Cities, and have been successful throughout the area and really have become a leader in apartment development throughout the area. We currently have 8,000 units of apartments developed, and we fund our projects through high wealth individuals, and we've got about 620 of them in the Twin Cities market, in the Minnesota area and around the country. And we've got about $2 billion in real estate assets, with another $2 billion in our pipeline over the next 2 years. Why that's important is because we can quickly finance projects and make them work. So we've got a proven track record to make that happen. Over the last, since October, Jen, when did you start? So June, it's been since June I've been working with the city on this project. And there's been several different iterations. We looked at how to make this building fit properly on the site. I knew right away that we were gonna run into issues with parking. So we've come up with a strategy to lay out the site to really optimize the amount of parking, but keep the project cost relatively inexpensive. The other thing would be retail, incorporating retail into the project. That was a request of the city. That's part of the downtown master plan. And after that, we did a tour of the city, saw all the retail space has completely occupied, and thought it was a great opportunity to incorporate that. In our original proposal, we didn't extend the building all the way over to the corner on Roers in Arboretum, and we made that change. We pulled it all the way over to the corner at staff's request. Right now, we have our amenity space in that corner, but staff has also suggested maybe that we put the retail in that corner, and we're open to having further conversations about those changes. And then, as we have been progressing with the community and local downtown business groups, parking and traffic has been a concern. Staff has also requested that we order a traffic study and a parking study, so we have done that as well. I've personally met with the business, a couple downtown business owners and property owners. They've continued to mention the parking concerns and some of the other projects that are coming in. And we originally were proposing a parking ratio of 1 to 1.3, and we've been able to incorporate 1 to 1.5 parking ratio. So that's 1.5 stalls for every unit in the building. That also adds up to 1 parking stall for every bedroom in our buildings, and it's even slightly over that number. Our original proposal also incorporated 27 stalls for retail, and we've been able to extend that to 37 stalls at this point. So we've been working really hard to manage that. Last week, we had a community meeting, and there was a lot of vocal members of the community saying this is going to create more traffic. And I'm not going to lie and say that it doesn't. There's definitely going to be some more traffic. So like I said, we've ordered a traffic study on behalf of the city, or on behalf of us, but requested by the city. And so we'll be getting that hopefully before City Council. So I'm going to go on to just kind of an understanding of why Roers would want to do this project and what really attracted us to the area. And so I think maybe the next one. So over the last 100 years, you could see what we've done here is I'm showing here what the growth of the city of Victoria has been. And every year it's been, with the exception of the 20s and the 30s, a substantial growth in the city. the last 20 years, or the last 10 years, from 2010 to 2020 is almost 50%. And it's still on pace to keep moving faster. And with all the residential, the single-family housing that's being built in the city, that's going to continue to grow. Next. So one important thing about Victoria and just apartments and finding a good development project is supply and demand. And we really think that there's an imbalance in supply and demand here. Right now, the United States, this chart is showing the percentage of households that rent in a community. So in the United States, that's about 35% of households are renters. In Minnesota, that number's 28. Minneapolis, it's 52. Chaska, so these are all the communities that are right around. Chaska's 30%, Chanhasen's 13%, Waconia is 29%, and Victoria is 7%. That's showing me that there's not a lot of supply of rental housing in the community. Now, the other piece is Victoria Flats is one of the best new comps for us to identify what the real demand is. And the rents are really strong there for this area. And we feel like we can come in, make this project work, even though there's other developers who are coming in and doing pretty large apartment projects. My other observation would be with the addition of the additional apartments, that supply and demand will kind of balance out, and it'll kind of create a bit of naturally occurring affordable housing. So I would imagine that rents would kind of stabilize and would be providing additional housing types or housing options, apartment housing options for the community. So that being said, I think we've done a really good job trying to work with all the different parties involved in the community. I'm always giving my card out to the people who come in to the community meetings and just saying, please call me. I'd love to kind of see if we can figure out the issues around your concerns. So that being said, if you guys have any questions, the commission, we'll be around for conversation with the community as well.
Superb. Yeah, thank you very much. I think you've actually answered quite a few of the questions that probably many of us have had at the same time. I'll open it up to public comment. And while this is not a formal public hearing, it'll be an opportunity for us, for the developer, for staff, for the planning commission to get feedback on this proposal. And again, keep in mind, this is step number one of quite a few steps that'll be taken before anything truly does happen at the same time too. So I will restrict comments to 5 minutes per speaker. Come up to the podium and identify yourself and your address, and we will then hear what each individual has to say, what their thoughts are. So it's your opportunity. Or if you have a spokesperson, Mr. Gregory?
Good evening. Tom Gregory. I don't know if I'll reach the mic or not, but address 1885 Stagger Lake Lane, just across the trail from this project. Personally, I like this. I think this is great. This is a tough site to develop. Those of you that are familiar with it know that we've got contamination issues on the south. Most of the northwest area is all fill. So to put a building on that is a tough thing. So a plan like this to excavate all that out and then fill it up with parking, I mean, it's kind of ideal for that site. It's not a cheap site to develop. Very expensive. I think most of you know that. Between the contamination and the fill, it's a tough thing. So the fact that we've got a developer here at the table willing to pay the price for this piece of ground, put up a building there, I am excited about it. I think it's great. It needs to be developed. We've got very blighted buildings on this building. They've all reached the end of their use. It's time for some new looks on this area. It's run down. It needs to be fixed. The fact that there's 4,500 square feet of retail, not great, better than nothing. It would be, if we could have comments for more retail somehow, that'd be great. The fact that they're moving Rose Street to the west, adding parking, commercial parking, I think that's great. From an agenda's perspective, the fact that it's gonna be a nice sound barrier between my house and Floyd's, I think that also is a huge benefit, but that's a personal agenda on my part. But anyways, no, I'm excited. I like the project. I think we're lucky to have a developer come forward with this, so thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Don. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to take the opportunity? And again, this is prior to a formal public hearing, but we want to get feedback, want to get information. The developer does, staff does, we do at the same time. So it's an opportunity.
I'm Robert Pollack. I live over in Steiger Lake Lane at the Steiger Lake condos. Could you put up slide number 18 on your presentation for me? So I have a couple of questions. First of all, we're talking about a 55-foot height clearance, and I was wondering, have any plans been proposed that actually stayed within the 35-foot height requirement that's in the city ordinances, or has it all just been the 55? And how do you even come up with that number? I mean, how many feet per story is that? That's more than, yeah. If you could.
My name is Jeff Rady from Momentum Design Group. We're the architects on the project, and Frank, we also did the Victoria Flats across the street as well a couple years ago. So with retail, we need a certain clear height in there to make the retail successful. So right now, we have 16'6" floor to floor for the retail. That includes structure and HVAC and things like that. Okay. All the other floors are 11-foot floor to floor, which yields out a 9-foot ceiling in all of the units. And that's so we're 49'6" from first floor to the top floor roof sheathing. And then we're 53 to 55 with the different parapets that we have drawn.
Is that on the Steiger Lake side?
Steiger Lake side would probably be, it would probably be 52, 51.
And so on the Rose Street, is it still?
It would be a little taller on Rose Street because we want to differentiate the facades a little bit and add a little bit more design there.
Okay.
But yeah.
I just didn't know, with leveling out the grades and stuff.
Right. On the bike trail side, of course, the bike trail is way down low, and we do have one level of parking exposed, which is the first floor level of parking exposed back there with a retaining wall after it. So, does that make any sense? Kind of. Okay.
So looking at that map, Steiger Lake Lane condos are down there, and that it's hard to point. But anyhow, we're 15 feet below where you guys are proposing to start your 55 feet. So 55 plus 15 feet down, we're looking at a 70-foot wall that we're going to be looking out at. So I mean, to us, it doesn't seem like a 4-story building. It seems more like a 6-story building that we're looking at. So that's the vantage point we're looking at. And the other thing is, isn't there a proposal for building like apartments along Steiger Lake Lane, a little bit west of Steiger Lake condos already?
So we're gonna have a bunch on that side, or side of us, plus straight ahead of us,
Well, there is on downtown west.
Yeah, downtown west.
Yep.
which is on the same,
Just,
same side as we are.
And how many apartment buildings are being proposed in there? Or how many apartments?
What is,
One.
71.
It's 145 units, just one building at the moment that's been approved.
Okay. And then, so, you know, if you look at that diagram, maybe I'll walk around there. You know, it's gonna be a nightmare. Like when we pull out of sight, like condos now, you come out here and you're heading toward downtown, and a lot of people on Rose Street right now just come whizzing around the corner because they can't really see back here on the bridge. And then you run into people dropping off their kids, you know, at the corner there, and then you run into people dropping off the food for the Winchester and Rye. But you're gonna have all these people in the new apartment complex over here, and then you're proposing one here, and it sounded like from the last presentation we had, they're all gonna be required to go out this way, so everybody's gonna be funneling down here in the big, you know, in the Victoria Drive, so, I don't know, it seems like a nightmare.
Yeah, 300 cars twice a day.
Cart,
And just the whole idea, once you put up a well, it seems like a 7-story building, but a 5 or 4-story building, you know, you can't get rid of that. You're basically gonna have this big chunk of building sitting there, and it kind of takes away from the feeling of a smaller town community. Like if you go to Excelsior and you walk down Water Street, you get kind of a nice mix of lower buildings and, you know, so forth. But, you know, once you put something like that up, I think you're pretty much putting a wall at the end of where the cute downtown ends, and you got this big apartment building. So that's,
very good. Well, we very definitely appreciate your thoughts and your input on that. And that, you know, pretty much goes into the formula of how we work with that, so.
have there been any proposals looking at lower contour complexes, you know, like?
Well, this is the initial stage, the initial step one, and based on feedback, anything's possible.
Does Roers have any building designs for like lower buildings?
So that's a good question, and I think you started asking it earlier, is, you know, how did we come up with a 4-story building or this size of a building? And it's really based on the total number of units. We really gain efficiency in the operations of the building when we have around this number of units. Projects that are 70-unit buildings are just much more cost intensive to run, because you just lose the economies of scale. So that's why this number is specific.
So Roers doesn't really build anything less than 4 stories?
It's not necessarily about the number of stories, it's the amount of units that we can get onto the site. And so we are kind of battling here with the amount of parking and the number of units per acre and stuff like that. And this is kind of where we landed with the number of units, based on that kind of formula. Does that make sense?
You're really not adding parking to the general public.
Um,
I mean, you're
Theoretically,
talking about 1.5 per
sure.
bed.
Now, and that's,
Or 1 per bed.
yeah, so that would be on the inner parking area. And then the parking on Rose Street, and according to the staff report too, it's about 20 units or 20 stalls would be required for the retail. And right there, we've got about 37 stalls. So we're providing extra spillover for downtown in that location.
Yeah, but 17 spots.
we
You're
believe-
Adding
Yeah.
how many people?
So,
You know,
but
150 people?
we fully believe that we're even over parking the apartment complex. At 1-to-1 per bedroom, that's a very good parking ratio. And we think that would even be sufficient for, you know, the daily deliveries, our staff coming into the building and parking, and then any of the guests associated with the building as well could all be parking in that inboard area, whereas the frontage would be more for for retail and spillover from downtown.
Chair, members of the commission, if I might jump in really quick and just suggest that if there are folks in the public that have questions, if they could enter their questions into the record at the podium so that it's on the record and available for folks who would like to review the meeting. The developer is then more than welcome to obviously answer those questions, but making sure that we have everything recorded appropriately.
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Kathy Beaver. I also live in the Steiger Lake condominium building. And while I appreciate the aesthetics of the building, my concern, in addition to the increased traffic that will now be going in front of my home, is just the aesthetics of what I see when I look out my window. Currently, when I look out my window, I see a lot of trees, which are gorgeous in the fall, beautiful in the summer. But I'm concerned that if there's a 4-story building that's going up over there, what I'll be looking at is a concrete jungle. And I just don't understand how putting another 145 apartment units in downtown Victoria is going to add to the aesthetic of downtown Victoria.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Chisholm. I also live at Victoria Flats, or not Victoria Flats, Cedar Lake Condominium Association, 1776 Cedar Lake Lane. You know, my concern, I share the concerns that are expressed here. I also think it's good to develop that land, but I think it's not the right scale. Victoria's is, in a recent survey that the city conducted, there was overwhelming sentiment to try to preserve the feel of Victoria as a small town. And I totally share that sentiment. And I fear that this really changes the town in a negative way. It takes space from the central area and converts it to a gigantic apartment complex, twice the size of Victoria Flats. The retail, to me, is minimal for the size of that area, what we get of retail space. I think people want the area developed, but they want it developed that will serve more of the community at large. The downtown area is actually quite small in Victoria, and this takes a sizable part of the downtown and converts it into a gigantic building that'll be there for decades to come. And there are other projects that are going into other apartments. There's one, is it the Gannon building?
Proposed, yep.
Proposed. We also heard talk that there's one over where National Bank is. And so what are we gonna have in the city of Victoria, the downtown area? What's gonna be left for the community at large? You know, what are the amenities that we're supposed to share and the living space and the outdoor space? It'll forever change the character of the town. There's plenty of room in Victoria, land-wise, to build apartments. We don't have to cram them all into the central area. It'd be nice to look at other small towns that have preserved a character of a small town, that are vibrant city centers, rather than just a place to jam in more apartments. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, appreciate your input on that.
My name is Pat Heining. I moved into Steger Lake condos in 2012. I believe I heard that date mentioned. That's when Roers started their company, 2012. I moved from a small town of 1,100 people. So this was small town to me again, not 1,100 people. One of the big reasons is the trail. When COVID hit, everybody started coming to Victoria. They'd unload their bicycles, they'd unload their strollers, they'd unload their kids. The trail was, even with this, no longer a trail. You start putting in 149 units. What's going to become of this trail, which was a big reason I can hop on that trail, go Excelsior, Hopkins, anywhere downtown Minneapolis or St. Paul. I no longer choose to go downtown Minneapolis or St. Paul, however, because I love my small town of Victoria. My other concern is, within the past 2 weeks, there was an accident on the highway. Something happened. Flashing lights I could see. I didn't notice the flashing lights. What I saw was all this traffic coming on Steger Lake. What is going on? Rose Street, cars were parked on Rose Street, couldn't even get onto Steger Lake to make a right or left turn because of the traffic being diverted from the highway down there through our town. Are you gonna make our bridge bigger? How are you gonna get cars across that bridge with this kind of traffic? What are you gonna do about the parking when we go across to hit and make a right turn on Main Street or a left turn to follow our way that way to the highway? Cars parked on either side there. You can't meet 2 cars on that street right now. And there certainly will not be room to meet cars on Steger Lake, the bridge or this side of the bridge. I just don't know where you're going with this. I don't get it.
Appreciate it, thank you. I identify Victoria as a city of parks, lakes, and cars. And cars are one of the what many of us would view as necessities and a disadvantage at the same time too. So, the compromise of what happens or how it happens will come into play at the same time too. So, any other thoughts?
Can I make another?
Sure. Yep.
I wondered about the parking too, when you exit. There's gonna be a right turn only exit on Roes, onto Highway 5.
Yep.
Is my understanding. And so I would assume many of the cars are gonna be going east on 5 that are leaving the property. So they either have to go all the way down toward the Dairy Queen and there'll be a roundabout or something there, could do that. Or you could go Rose Street, take a right on Steger, and then go over to Victoria Drive, and then take a left where there's, but can you imagine all the cars leaving there, like in the morning or coming back, trailing down that way and around the corner, and then they're gonna take a left turn from Victoria Drive onto Highway 5. And that narrow, that road isn't gonna accommodate that because it's, it's for straight traffic and it's also for left turns. They're gonna be wrapped all the way around from Rose Street, Victoria Drive, and Steger Lake Lane to Victoria Drive, waiting to turn left on Highway 5. And if they continue down Steger Lake, they don't take Victoria Drive, but they take Steger Lake Lane all the way down to the end, where you can turn left on 5. How are you gonna do that? It's not gonna be any easier to turn left on 5 there. I don't know what the plan is there, but when that's a 4-lane, it's gonna be the same. It's gonna, you see what I'm saying? I don't understand the traffic thing, coming and going from that, when there's that many people living there.
Yeah, and, certainly that's where the traffic study comes in. And is an impossible situation, or how do we make it work, one or the other? But that's input for the developer at the same time and for city staff, so. Very valid points.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would debate you on it.
No, all right, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else?
I'm Jean McNeil, and I live on Steger Lake Lane too, and I object to the traffic. I mean, if I come down Rose Street to turn to left to Steger, I have to pull out a little bit, and the cars coming around here come around pretty fast. And with cars parked the other way, you can hardly see that way either. And then you get, down to the corner, and it's hard to make a right turn because you got cars coming this way, and it's narrow going out that way. And I just can't see that many people, because the only way you can get out from the apartment is going, you have to go west. You can't go east, you can't go out that way, so they have to come back out through Rose Street. So I totally object.
Well, I will only say that developments in the outlying areas of Victoria, we deal with traffic flow and access at the same time, so it's as long as we have cars, there's some things that are become reality. Anyone else that would like the opportunity?
Okay, I'm Jane Lillistahl, and I'm also in the Steiger condos.
Sure.
And I've got a couple of issues. We have a minimum of, was it 3-story buildings? And we would have to make a deviation, is that correct, for the height?
Variance.
Okay. Oh, okay, variance, and you did that for the flats, correct? Why do we have a policy if we keep changing it? What's the purpose of the policy in the first place? And I think more important is, what do we want Victoria to look like over the next decade? And Tom, you brought it up, others have too. What attracted us to this place in the first place? Is there another better use for that particular plat of land that would give you the privacy for your home and still be attractive and beneficial? It would allow for people to come in to use the trail, perhaps parks, even a little playground. We don't have a little playground area. But I think of something that's attractive that brings people into retail. And if we wall in our retail space, we will not have any use for future growth or any space for future growth. One of the concerns I had about the plan was that the prime corner, which is accessible by the first floor, would be designated for amenities for the residents who live there. So you lose more, potential retail space that could be enhanced. I'm not opposed to the structure. I would just like to take it and move it away from the center of the town. I understand the importance of a percentage of rental space to get a balanced community, but I think by what we're doing here, we are really killing the goose that laid the golden egg.
Thank you for your input. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenny Larkin, and I hate to be redundant, but I live at Steiger Lake also. There's just a couple things I wanted to mention. First of all, I think that we obviously need to develop that space. It's prime space for downtown Victoria. However, I think this building is what I would call just high density. It's just too high of a density for our small little town, and that the things that we all moved here for that we really love would be kind of dwarfed by all these people, traffic, and cars, and everything that would bring in. I have certainly some concerns about our trail system. I think all of us noticed when Victoria Flats came in that all of a sudden the trails got busier, and can be a good thing, but I think it can also be overwhelming. I know that living on the trail side of the building in the summer, I sure hear a lot of action on the trails just outside our building. And then the last thing I'd like to mention is that 4,500 square feet is nothing. I mean, that's the size of pretty much a large home in Victoria. That's all the bigger that is. So I don't think we need another dentist. I don't think we need another chiropractor. I think we need new services to come into Victoria. And I don't think that small square footage is going to attract that kind of commercial development. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else that would like the opportunity?
May I sit? You want to go first? No, you go. Okay, you go.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Kilner, and I live at 1776 Steiger Lake Lane. No one has said the numbers here, but Our building has 42 units. So if you keep that into perspective, when you're looking at some of these plans, and we're in the background, we are 42 units. It's a third of the size. More land and a third of the size of the structure. It's several of us within the last month sat with a business owner who ticked off all of the proposed new buildings that are supposed to go up. And I'll just refresh everybody's memory. What I heard was 5. One of them was a hotel at the old National Bank site. There is another project in the works for somewhere between Victoria Flats and Winchester and Rye. I'm not quite sure where that is. Then we have the one on 5 and 11, which is again 150. I'm not sure the number. I may be making that up. I'm not quite sure. And then the proposal for directly across the street for a senior-only building, again with subsequent numbers. Okay, we've all been on 5. I don't know if anybody else gets there any differently than I do, but it's always steady flow of traffic and backed up, and you're stopping. I did look at the MnDOT plans today for the future of 5, and I see there are some plans, but they are not. It's still a 2-lane road with options to spread out the flow of traffic via access roads, and I'm sure you folks know all the technical names. So they're working around that road. This building, I'm looking at this building, and there's these 2 lanes in little downtown Victoria. It's just, in my opinion, way oversized for the project. I agree with everybody. This piece of land does need work. It's unsightly, it's noisy, it's dirty, but nothing to this scope. So those are my points.
Thank you. We'll take a couple more if there's anyone that would like to speak on it. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to the planning commission. Sure.
Hi, Dorothy Weitzel at Tiger Lake Condominium. I'm concerned about the Rose Street parking that you were going to be moving the road over to make more parking space on both sides of Rose Street. Has anyone thought of all of the delivery trucks that go in to behind like Floyd's and all of those retailers on that side, would be the east side of there are semis that go in there. They go in and they go out, and they have a heck of a time at times getting in and out of there with cars parked on that street. And you're going to be allowing more cars to be parked on that street. It's not going to work for those semis coming in. They come off 5, go in, come out, and then they go off on Steiger Lake Lane, and they have a turn to make on that also. So I've watched them. I'm in 304. I can see them. I watch them, and I don't know how they do it, but it's awesome. It's unreal. But there's going to be maybe a few bumpers taken off on those cars. To me, I would, very. And then there are also the smaller trucks that come in, the medium-sized trucks. They don't seem to have that much of a problem, but those semis, how they work it, I've got no idea. But they're in and out of there, and they're usually sometimes twice a week, and I do watch them. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one more if there's someone else that would like to chime in? If not, I'll open the floor to the Planning Commission to discuss. Commissioners, questions, concerns, comments?
I have a question. I think now where the fourth floor patio, that Highway 5 facing amenity space, is that not used as overflow parking for Floyd's kind of in a, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's formalized, but I know that I go by and see quite a few cars parked there, particularly on the weekend. Am I right? I don't know if it's how that agreement is with Leuthner's, if they're just being, or if Floyd pays for overflow or how that works.
He used to have that blocked off a couple of years ago, and Bill said he has taken down
Now he lets them park there.
Boulders?
yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. It's for overflow.
Well, and so when I think about parking ratios, I'm thinking about the loss of some parking. So I think I appreciate that you've been able to get to a 1 to 5. I get that. It's very hard to do in apartments, particularly in tight spaces. But I'm a little concerned. We all know that, depending on what that retail is, and granted, it's probably 2 smaller retails at 4,500 square foot. It's maybe a Pilates studio and a something. You can't fit very much. But I feel like the Floyd's traffic will overflow there because they are going to lose their overflow space in this design. So that is a concern for me. I think that maybe needs to be talked about with the owners of Floyd's and figure out, what that traffic, and that might be part of your traffic study, is to look at that weekend parking, because it's really hard, particularly on those Friday and Saturday nights, I think. Yeah, sure.
So that's a great question. And as far as timing and peak parking periods, we've had these conversations with the parking consultant. Those periods are Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. And if you've got retail that's appropriate in different time periods, it doesn't matter if Floyd's is spilling over onto this parking area, because that
In the
retail-
evenings.
In the evenings.
Saturday and Sunday, they're really busy too. That's the only thing. Like
Yeah.
football games, they're
Sure.
packed.
Yep.
When the motorcycles pull in, they're packed.
Another thing I would say is, like I said, right now we're parking the building 1 to 1 bedroom. That's 200 parking stalls. And it's 205 parking stalls, and I've got the calculation right here. So theoretically, we could be parking additional, parking for retail inboard as well. And so if you take that into consideration, there's 262 total parking stalls on the entire site. If you take just the inboard area, I'm sorry, the area, the units, the parking stalls
Interior.
dedicated to the units.
The surface lots right here.
The surface lot, that's like 57 extra that would be available off demand. And then, remove that requirement by the city of 20 units. And so you've got like about 30 spillover stalls. So I think what I'm trying to get at is
There are some
there's
inside.
the demand in the internal parking structure or parking area will not be full all of the time. Retail can be parking inside there as well, depending on where the retail would be located. Somebody had mentioned, well, it'd be great if the retail could be on the corner.
Yeah.
We're open to having that conversation with the city, and so staff and the Plan Commission on how that functions.
Or if you could add that space and have more retail, that would be even better.
Well, that footprint is about 6,000 square feet.
Yeah. I think that, the requirement in this area is, and the request is that the ground floor be retail, and it looks like we're not even at 25% retail on the ground floor in this design. So I think if you can expand your retail and maybe give some more room for the citizens of Victoria to feel like they're getting something in return for the apartment development, because I know that's a big piece that You know, most of the people that live in Victoria are owners, obviously, due to your counts. That shows that. And I think that we've heard retail for, you know, 10 years at least, and I've been here 20, so pretty much. And I just think that we're gonna have a lot of upset citizens if we get 4,500 square foot of retail on the front facing of Highway 5. Because Highway 5 is our visual where people will see Victoria and come in. I do applaud you on your parking counts. I think that you've done a great job because I know how hard that is. As a previous developer, I do think that we're gonna have a hard time with people thinking of going under the bridge to get that parking. It's a physical, mental barrier. We have a hard time right now with people parking at the bank on the other side of Winchester and Rye because it just seems too far, even though it's really quite close. They'll circle for, you know, 20 minutes trying to find something closer when they could park in those bank parking places and be there already. But so I think that going through the bridge might be a bridge too far. For a lot of people, unless they're entering through to see a resident, because there's no entry. They're gonna have to walk back around. So I don't know that, and maybe that's intentional to preserve guest parking for the residents. I don't know, but it does. And I'll have to concur with what's been said to here, is I do have some concerns of the flow. So I'm glad you're getting your traffic study, because I think you add the 150, and who knows, I mean, I know we've said there's 5 potential developments. I just want to say those are potential. We have an interest rate environment that's not friendly right now. So many of the people who have came forward may pull their, you know, and wait until the interest rates are better. So nothing's going forward with the exception of the one downtown west. And again, they would probably need to get financing. So that's not even a done deal. I think until they start digging, it's not a done deal. And even sometimes they're not. But
my one observation based on your observation on additional retail is it's this balancing act for us of more retail, more parking. So it's just something we'd like to get some clear direction as what's more important, the parking or additional retail.
We want our cake. We like to eat it. No, I think they are both important, and I see the predicament for sure. But it'd be nice to, at least you know what people are looking for. I know this is your, sketch plat, so maybe if you can look at those numbers. I'll turn it over to other commissioners to let them pipe in.
I have a few questions. So in planning the retail, did you ever consider moving the retail closer towards the trail? The reason why I ask is downtown west, a portion of that will be retail. And we want to create a corridor from where we are right now to the west. That's the goal, right? So creating retail kind of where we talked about how on the northwest portion of this property, the fill is bad, whatever. I mean, obviously you've got a structured parking, so that would support retail on that side as well. So I'd like to understand a little bit about that, number one. So if you could answer that first.
So the initial location where it's currently located was done solely because there's that parking field right in front of it. Just the simplicity of the function of that. The next observation from staff was put it on the corner of Arboretum and Rose Street. We've never thought of it on the corner, just because it's away from the parking slightly and it's not holding that street corner like planning officials tend to like. So that's really the thought pattern behind that.
I mean, I'm no designer, but in my mind, you could make the bays front to back, and you could have parking on the south side of this property where the parking is right there, and have your retail entrance there. Maybe there's a way to create some synergy. That's my thought. I think it's important to explore. Can you comment on the depths of this retail? Like, how deep is this 4,500 square foot area? 40 feet. 40 feet. That's okay. That's not deep at all.
Because we have housing on the back side of it, and we have a corridor between that.
And there's no way to make it front to back.
It would just be more retail. So the answer is yes, of course, we can make it front to back.
Okay.
Yes.
How many apartments would that pull?
Um,
6,
40,
8?
well, it'd be, yeah, about 5. Yeah.
I just think by doing this, you're gonna bring people in to actually utilize your parking field here, because they're gonna wanna park right in front of the front door. I mean, maybe it's the back door, but it's another entrance point. So something to explore, as far as another solution, and it also gets us more retail space. I just think,
It's kind of like parking behind Excelsior and going in through the back. I mean, those parking lots are utilized because people know they can go through the back of the retail.
yes, great example.
A little bit on that point still. Somebody made a comment, and maybe this is probably more appropriate for a different time, but somebody made a comment about loading. We are not proposing a restaurant at this point. Any kind of other retail user would have loading needs, but nothing like semis and all of that kind of stuff. And the building would be designed around how to do the best, designed for the best way to load those units. So you wouldn't have trucks parking out in front. Great observation, but it just, we do a better job of managing that than buildings that were built 60 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you comment on the restaurants, because that, you get one restaurant there and they're gonna gobble up all your parking.
Right.
That.
And if we had some potential restaurateur, we would have to go out and find additional parking elsewhere that we would, have some kind of valet parking that would bring the cars there and stuff. So I think it'd be a bit of a challenge, but yeah.
So you mentioned there's 37 stalls that's dedicated to retail.
So on that site, you can faintly see a red line, and it's really at the back end of the parking on the left next to the retail. That's our property line, and what we plan on doing is kind of turning Roes a little bit onto our property, adding that parking, and then dedicating that back to the city.
So, can you give me a parking count of how many stalls are public? So all of those along
All
Roes?
of those would be dedicated back to the city.
There are currently 4.
Okay.
We're putting 37 in.
Okay. So, all right.
Yes, because the left-hand side currently is no parking on Rose side,
Okay.
Rose Street.
Lastly, I just want to comment a little bit about the density. The challenge with our zoning, with CBD zoning, is it allows this kind of project. It does. They're asking for a variance to have 4 floors. This, our CBD zoning allows for 3. So I think it's important that we consider stage development. Anytime you get something that's really small with a little amount of units with something with a lot of units, that creates challenges. And we've talked about a lot of them today. So I think it's something that we all need to be very aware of. So I understand your efficiencies that are necessary with the scale of efficiencies for management and whatnot. I would prefer less units. I would. Lastly, I know a lot of people have talked about this retail right at Rose and 5. The challenge with retail right there, and this is not something you think of automatically, but from a stacking perspective, that could be very dangerous. If you get a lot of retail right there, which a lot of retailers would love that because it's so visible at 5, you get, let's count it, 1, 2, 3, 4 cars stacked right there, you have an accident waiting to happen pretty quickly. So it's not easy, and you have to, where do you park for that retail? I mean, based on if this is the design, you got to go in like this, and you got to go park over to the left side. But this is a new development. People are gonna be like, where do I park? And it's going to stack right there. So that's all my comments.
One just quick observation about the height of the building is Victoria Flats was not the first variance for 4 stories. Probably pardon me, for the PUD. It was also the Steger Lake condos. So that was one of the first examples of that PUD. So-
And, just related to that, because I know, as a developer, you're probably thinking about, again, economies of scale. Does this project have viability, were it to be held at 3? I mean, or would it be a math equation that doesn't justify it because of those economies of scale, or the cost of the units have to be proportionally higher?
Yeah,
Which
I
might
mean,
dry
there is
dry
a
out.
ratio there that, takes the operating costs down, makes it just a little bit less efficient to run, and, makes it harder to make the project work.
So those are some of the trade-offs where the tenants would likely be.
Or the
in a
building would
smaller
be
one, if it were
designed
worked out, they would be
with
paying
less beautiful facade. It would be a cheaper building to kind of manage that upfront investment.
Just something to think about for me. Okay.
Yeah, and I think, the affordability part of it too is of creating these extra units for the community, for renters, gives them extra options, and in supply and demand world, likely with more supply of units, there will be better rental pricing. So
What is that pricing?
right now, we're very competitive with Victoria Flats, but that's how we're underwriting the project, is what I should say.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that
What's your-
pricing.
It's like,
So I have that here.
yeah, it's high.
Studios are $1,400, one bedrooms, $1,700, one bedroom plus den, $2,100, two bedrooms, $2,400, and three bedrooms, probably 30. I don't know if they have any threes. Anyways, $3,000.
That wouldn't include parking, right? You would have another $100 a month for parking on top of that.
Correct.
It's interesting how Victoria's rents are getting higher than Chanhasen's. I mean, they are higher. I think if you look at the venue above Aldi, your one-bedroom dens are less there than what we're talking about here at either of these. Which,
And that's because there's only 80 units of brand new apartments here, and a lot of people want to be here.
yeah, I wonder, one of the things I did have a question about when you put those percentages of rental up, Cheska had a very high percentage, but they also have a very high percentage of affordable rentals, as does Cheska, Waconia as well. We have really none to speak of. So I wondered if you had looked at those, isolating out affordable versus market rate.
No, I don't
Okay.
have that,
Okay.
that data directly in hand. The same thing, Victoria Flats is the one project we looked at.
You're just
the
looking
comp
at
for.
as comp.
There's an apartment building on the other side of Victoria Flats
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't come up on CoStar and some of these commercial real estate programs. Those are what we call naturally occurring affordable housing. They're very low entry level type product that probably significantly less than, for sure, significantly less than Victoria Flats, and more affordable. So that's the naturally occurring affordable. But providing this extra supply will probably bring those rents down.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
So that's one benefit to the city as well.
What's your demographic that you're going after? Like,
It's
or is it
it's empty nesters, it's people my age, divorcees, 20-somethings out of college. Mom and dad want them to get out of the house, but they want them to be in the neighborhood. It's that demographic.
I'm just thinking traffic study wise, if you got empty nesters going in, they aren't leaving for work early in the morning.
Yeah. And, I talked to one gentleman at the community meeting. He wanted a 3-bedroom for himself, a big unit. So that's one car for a 3-bedroom space. So.
Have you noticed with your apartments, just the, after COVID, or that people working from home has really reduced the traffic counts? Because it seems like it seems like even in the neighborhoods, it's reduced.
I can't exactly speak to the traffic counts, but there's definitely more working from home from our properties. And that's how we're actually redesigning, or with new developments, designing the amenity spaces differently to take into account people working from the amenity spaces because they want to get out of their unit because maybe their roommate is being too loud, or they want to go use a projector somewhere for their team's meeting. So yeah, I think that is an important point too.
The Wall Street Journal has really followed the rental market real closely. And of course, it's in just increasing dramatically in every major city. And one of the things they talked about, a single person with a 2-bedroom apartment, one to live in, the other to work in at the same time. But the demand for rental has just, it's just, the numbers to me were literally astounding. And I've followed that as a market at the same time. So, so you, of course, have done your market research.
Yeah.
And demand is there. And
then demand is going to be ticking up because interest rates, like Julie mentioned, have gone up. So it's harder to buy homes. So you're more likely to be able to find affordable rental, and that's your only option.
Yep.
So
yeah,
good point.
That's the trending.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you have anything, Christian?
Oh, I got lots of stuff.
Kara,
Just waiting for everybody to get done.
hey, Kara, I got one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
Kara, can you explain I know there's approved improvements for Steiger Lake going down to 13.5 acres. How Steiger Lake is going to intersect with 5, because if people are coming from Waconia to feed into this, they're either going to have to go to the stoplight, go around downtown to get in because it's right in, right out. They're either going to have to come in down by Dairy Queen or wherever that, through the 13.5 acres. Am I reading this bigger plan correctly? How people, if they were coming from Waconia to get into here, they'd either go to the stoplight or exit earlier off of 5.
Sure. So a couple of comments. First, the plan for Rose Street to become a right-in, right-out only becomes a reality when Highway 5 becomes 4 lanes through downtown Victoria. And that's not currently funded. So we're talking about, at least a decade. So all the funding applications that have been going in are focused on making 5 a 4 lane from 41 up to really, now we've discussed extending that to commercial, but up through the Steiger Lake Lane 78th Street intersection. So that's what the current funding pursuit is around that section of road. It's many millions of dollars of funding that are needed. I want to say 100 million that are needed for that section, and a lot of it isn't available yet. So this next section isn't in the plan for funding until that first project gets funded. So we're a ways out from the intersection of Rose and 5 becoming right in, right out, but we wanted to make sure that the developer understood that would be happening so that was getting disclosed to anybody who would be moving in there. So in the short term, that'll still remain a full access intersection like it remains today. In terms of Steiger Lake Lane, ultimately, Steiger Lake Lane will continue through to County Road 11 when the balance of the 13.5 acres is developed. Timing to be determined depending on market conditions and everything in that nature. The existing connection to Steiger Lake Lane will remain intact in this current phase of project. So that access point will still be here. The city is working with MnDOT to continue to have a connection to 5 from the 13.5 acres, generally in that same location of the Steiger current Steiger connection, and then including the connection out to 5. So we are in the process of preparing an RFP to do preliminary design work for the proposed roundabout by Dairy Queen. And we have included in that scope traffic analysis related to the development of the 13.5 acres, so we can, take a look at how the development that is occurring in that area is going to affect the downtown area. The city did do a traffic study of the downtown based on the adopted master plan. So, some of that information is available, and certainly we'll share that with their consultant who will be taking a look at this particular building. So I don't know that I actually answered your question. I rambled a lot more, but hopefully I got there.
Just a quick question. Steiger Lake Lane, the way it's lined up with the 13.5 acres, in your opinion, do you believe that the 13.5 acres can support more density based on that access to 5 today?
So generally, when we did the downtown master plan traffic study, we had all the proposed potential land uses in the existing downtown and the 13.5 acres. And there weren't any significant fatal flaws where the traffic study came back and said, whoa, you can't accommodate that. But it is a downtown traffic condition. So certainly, you see the challenges that exist today at the intersection of Highway 5 and Victoria Drive out by Floyd's. We do need to make improvements to that intersection to help with that left turning movement and the backup that exists in the area. But it is intended, this Victoria downtown is intended to have people move slowly, have people have to wait, and that does create some challenges. It's just kind of the reality that happens with downtown. But, all of these different potential projects that have been considered, and the density and the retail and all of that was factored into that traffic study that was done after the master plan. So yes, I think it works. I think the big question is whether or not we can get MnDOT to agree to allow us to maintain access where the existing connection is. And that's why we want to update that traffic analysis through today's lens, so we aren't sending everybody, just to the 2 exit points within downtown.
And that's certainly based to a certain extent on demand, on necessity, where MnDOT literally has to respond. True?
Yeah, there's safety concerns with the section of 5 between the bridge and County Road 11. The speeds there are still considered high speed. The roundabout did get funded through the regional solicitation process. So really that's going to start to kind of change the opportunity within that area to slow traffic down. It's currently posted at 55 or 45 all the way up to the bridge. So having a roundabout at that intersection and really activating that space to be more urban will help us address their concerns that they have with that access location today. We of course can't forget about the businesses on the south side of 5 in that area too. So we need to be working where we're looking at that whole corridor to make sure we're providing access equitably on both sides.
Very good. A lot of moving parts. Christian?
First, I'm in general support of this, along with former Councilman Gregory, regarding the fact that we're finding somebody who can come clean this mess up. I appreciate that some folks can look out and see some beautiful trees, but just beyond those beautiful trees is basically a dump. I guess my question for you on top of that would be, is there any other option, like inverting this to make the parking and the place look a little bit more encompassing and almost an endpoint for downtown? I know I'm probably answering my own question with this, but basically building the building along 5 as opposed to along the bike trail. Is that an option, or is that not an option due to what MnDOT might be doing?
Soils.
my observation is, and we've run scenarios like crazy, but this scenario is best for construction because of grades. The underground, or the first level parking structure is easily accessible on the top left part, whereas the second or half level at grade is accessible at the top of the inboard parking area. So that's how we were able to, really make the building work more efficiently.
Okay.
From a construction standpoint, instead of if you put the building, if you invert the building like you said, all of the parking structure would have to be underground, which is significantly more expensive.
Yeah, and then as we're going through this and talking about Highway 5 and widening it, all of a sudden you've got a whole bunch of other facilities that, potentially are in jeopardy, which brings me to the next point. Kara, would the area of Rose Street and Arboretum Boulevard be in jeopardy based on expansion of Highway 5, should that ever happen?
Sure. So with the work that's been completed to date, we do have a preliminary concept for what's needed for roadway width through there, and we did not identify the need for any additional right-of-way from this landowner or from at that intersection. Certainly, we will be sharing this sketch plat with MnDOT to get some official comments on it, but no red flags on my end from our initial review.
Great. My next spot, you guys kind of answered it. Traffic studies and independent studies are done for your facility and what you're doing today. I want to just make sure and hammer it home that, Rose is also taking into consideration the potential of Kraus-Anderson, potential of Amira, potential of the Gannon Place. I know it's kind of hard to throw all that in together, but you add all of those, you're going to have traffic issues. I know we think we can handle it, but I'm skeptical. Let's see. We talk a lot about bunkering and berming and treeing and putting up all sorts of nice areas so that things can be somewhat blocked. And I appreciate the folks that are in Cedar Lake saying, hey, now we're just looking at some sort of building complex. Is there any idea or possibility for landscaping and bunkering that would be along kind of where the dog run city-owned property area would be? Because I know he's kind of said at the beginning would be clear cutting all those trees down.
It wouldn't be complete clear cutting of those trees. Many of those trees would be removed. However, we would, right now, there's not a landscape plan there. Okay. That's just the architects putting in little nice visuals. There will be a landscape plan designed, and we'll be going beyond code minimum to make sure that the building is really well landscaped.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm less concerned about retail than many people just because the nature of retail is changing and, what are we gonna stick here at Walmart? Everyone buys stuff off of Amazon, it's delivered, whatever. But if that retail space is not taken up, what would you do with it?
Units.
Okay.
I'm sorry, if it's not taken up.
Yeah,
if it's empty.
Yeah, if you guys can't lease it out. Would there be
I think there's going to be demand for it. That's my observation.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Kara, infrastructure, how deep and how dangerous or how expansive is it to put this in here with nothing in place right now?
So sanitary sewer and water is already stubbed into the property. They might need additional service connections, and they do need to relocate a storm sewer line to accommodate the construction, but Public Works and I have reviewed that and don't have any concerns on that front with this site.
Awesome. I guess this is rental properties and Cedar Lake is condominium, so they own it, correct? I'd be curious to see if there's any sort of study that can be done. Gosh, I hate studies, but what is the economic impact of those people? I mean, I know we're having aesthetic impact, but I'd like to find out if there's any sort of true economic impact for them. Hopefully, obviously, it's on the positive side. Last but not least, I guess I would just say this in general to the Planning Commission and possibly to the council as well, is that while we are putting in a lot of these developments that should be able to provide for a wider variety of human to live in Victoria, we don't have the infrastructure and the public transportation to support things like this. You take a look at Chanhassen, you take a look at Eden Prairie, they've all got public transportation. We have a bunch of our apartment complexes going in that we don't have any sort of public transportation to help support. So then that's where we get into our parking issues. So I don't know, I'm just saying we gotta be careful with it because we aren't the same as Chanhassen. We aren't the same as Chaska. We aren't even the same as Excelsior, and they have their own parking problems. If you want my opinion on that, it's a different topic altogether. But I think we should be careful of it because these are gonna be all people that have to drive essentially, more or less. Or bike. Anyway.
Can I just make a comment to that?
Yeah.
So transportation, yeah, that's, MnDOT is the one that you got to work with some of the road improvements and stuff like that. But as far as schools and parks and all those kind of other ancillary city amenities, we will have to pay a park dedication fee. There's other impact fees that we'll have to pay as well that provide extra benefits to the city as well. So that being said, I just wanted to make sure that.
I think what he was,
I think we
what
should
he was
waive-
talking
waive the
about
park-
was,
Park for cleaning that mess up.
what he was talking about was buses, you know, we don't have, you know, like Jen
No, I
has.
get you.
Yeah, that's what we don't have here, which
Right.
the bus lines aren't out this far yet.
I think some people in Victoria drive and park at the Southwest Transit or the Chan or the
That's
Chelsea
just
station
it.
if you want to use.
We don't have
We still
large
do.
employers here. That's the
Right.
challenge.
Yeah.
If we did, then it would really be utilized. So, yeah,
But that's the whole, you're driving somewhere still.
yeah.
I think at the price points of these rentals, we can assume they're going to have cars regardless, even if there was public transportation because they're at a higher price point.
And like you said, there are Southwest Transit places they can go to move in if they want.
Just for the.
One thing I want to point out, we haven't really talked about the aesthetics because I think we're still trying to like get our arms around the overall project. I do think there's a lot to talk about in regards to the aesthetics. Is this the time and place?
Yeah, Chair and Commission, that would be one of the things that should be discussed this evening, in addition to all the things you've discussed already, is building materials, colors, things of that nature.
Christian, did you have any additional comments?
No, those were just, you guys covered a bunch and thank you for
Sorry,
letting me
I'm
jump in.
jumping in again. Sorry, I always do that.
Go ahead.
And that's okay.
My opinion, this aesthetic does not match our downtown whatsoever. I have concerns with it. I read the commentary that the retail tries to blend the look of downtown. This is such a large project. Because of that, it's kind of an afterthought. Yes, we see the brown brick and we see the black metal cladding, and it's okay. There's not enough variety. In my opinion, this is way too modern. It does not look like anything. I mean, like I looked at the Victoria Flats today and it's really beautiful. Actually, it was a nice reminder to see all the different building materials and how it does blend modern with old. And this is not doing that for me. So,
And so I can give you a little bit of overview of our thought pattern of how we approach this. And I thought it'd be a really cool idea to have a very modern building on the corner and then have a transition of like 2 or 3 different buildings. So if you look at that image, we were trying to get 2 or 3 different buildings so it looks like 3 buildings on Rose Street. And I don't disagree. Maybe we could do a better job with making it have that appearance where it's kind of breaking up the facade so that it looks like maybe more different buildings there.
yeah, I think that would go a
And
long
nodding
way.
more to the downtown.
I love what you did with the outdoor patio up top. I think the tenants are going to love that. I think that's an exciting way to design this
To watch the Floyd's patio.
Yeah, they're gonna enjoy concerts. That's
It's good
what
free
they'll
music.
do. Yeah, exactly.
I'd like it on the other side too, but, so you can look out over the 13.5 acres.
One thing, I know that we're gonna hear we've heard feedback about the height on the north side, but have you ever done a live wall on any of your projects?
I don't think so.
I just think that would be aesthetically interesting.
Yeah, we did it at Victoria Flats across the street here. There are vines that are growing on the Core 10 steel retaining wall right
Which
now.
side is that?
That's on the public parking area is
Okay.
a Core 10 steel retaining wall, corrugated, and there are vines growing on that.
Okay.
We're doing it on many projects. One thing to think about on the north side, it is only 4 stories. It does slope down as you go further west, so it's about 4.5 stories on that side. But it is at the northeast, it is only 4 stories.
Okay.
So,
Have you done a height variation between Steiger Lake condos and the 4th story here? Is there, because of topography, a big difference, like we were hearing about the 70-foot?
we have not studied that, but we can get prepared for that for the
It'd be
next
good
meeting.
to look at that, because I don't really know without living in those condos what it might look like going up, but it'd be nice to just know those numbers.
Their building is 4 stories and they also have a peaked roof, so I doubt that if we put our balcony on the north side, we'd be able to see the lake. We wouldn't, because their roof is fairly tall.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it really, the land sloped down enough there. That's what I was hearing.
Creating an actual 3D rendering would be really helpful.
Back to your comment on the green wall, I think that's what we would intend to do on our retaining wall adjacent to the trail. So
It'll look nice.
Jared, anything additional? Laura took my one idea that wasn't covered, which is the aesthetics. And it doesn't blend, in my view. It doesn't blend very well. And that's an area to take a look at. Is there anything else, Nathan, that you would like to, any closing thoughts on this?
Yeah, just to kind of walk back through the staff recommendation slide, we've talked a lot about the massing of the building. We talked a little bit about the design. Parking has been something discussed, trails. Staff will be looking at streetscaping as this project may move forward. So looking at the experience of pedestrians along that Rose Street corridor and interaction with the site. And just generally looking at the zoning and comp plan. I think we've talked about some of those standards and expectations. So I think the Planning Commission has covered a number of those areas, and we'll be presenting this to the City Council next for their review and maybe addressing some of the questions that are kind of open-ended at this point, but that would have been the staff recommendation for this evening, so.
Can I go one more?
Sure.
If you go back to the previous drawing, I'm not a huge fan of the white brick, but I wear 1980s stuff, so I'm not really sure what the heck's going on. But I think if we're allowing general parking inside the parking facility for everybody that goes to Victoria, a sidewalk of some nature along 5, I know there's a dude riding a bike there, but something that's a little bit more inviting that says, hey, you can walk along this way and walk all the way to Floyd's or to the Lion's Den or to any of those other places. I think a walkway along that front side would be beneficial. And so, I think people will just do it and you'll have a dirt path there otherwise.
Currently, there is a sidewalk right on the side of the parking, but we can continue it down to the corner.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
And I'll make the last one. In terms of the aesthetics too, yeah, like I actually looked at the color scheme. The white did jump out as being out of character. And I know I was trying to match it up with what our preferred colors are. And I'm new to the community, so that definitely jumped out to me in terms of the rest of the city.
Very good. Anything else on this? Otherwise, we'll close it out. I think we provided some pretty, as normal, some pretty remarkable input on this at the same time. Nathan, thank you very much for your knowledge, skill, and talent on this. And commissioners, as always, pretty incredible questions and comments on it. Public, thank you very much. It's, all of us live with it. Whatever may or may not happen, we all live with it. So your opportunity to have some input, and there will be a public hearing at a later date. And of course, everyone can come armed with any other additional thoughts, questions, concerns, and it'll all be taken under consideration. So, Marty, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we will then move on to our second item of discussion, is the sketch plat and concept plan review Kelzer Properties residential subdivision Summergate. And this is also no formal action or recommendations taken by the Planning Commission at the time of the sketch plat review. The sketch plat process is intended for the applicant to receive initial feedback from the Planning Commission and the City Council in advance of any necessary preliminary plat or rezoning applications. I will now turn this over to Nathan first, planning consultant with Bolton and Mink for staff presentation. Nathan?
Thank you, Chair. I will present, but in the next couple seconds, we'll get the screens back up and running so I can share my presentation that's prepared for this item as well. So I know that Jen is working on getting those up and running. Let's see what I can provide to you in the interim here. So this is returning to the Planning Commission from November 15th. You'll remember reviewing this at that meeting, those of you who are in attendance. Again, sketch plat review, so no formal action taken, and appreciate the developer staying with us for this item and the ability to answer your questions on the changes in this one. So if you'll remember the location of this site, it's northeast of the intersection of County Road 11 and Marsh Lake Road. The property is just north of 12 acres in size. Again, currently the zoning for this property is agriculture, but the applicant will be required to rezone for this development to an underlying zoning district of R1, low density residential. And so included in the staff report and packet, you have a site plan that's been revised. Really the main change here is the cul-de-sac that terminated on the west side of this proposed development. That was Catkin Way. Now in this revised site plan, you'll see that all the screens are off now. You'll see that.
Nothing.
You'll see that.
You can't see anything.
I got magnetic fingers.
I do too.
Great. Okay, so a few of you have it in front of you. That's wonderful. You'll see that in this revised plan that Catkin Way has been continued to further to the west. The reason this is necessary is, yep. Oh, we're paused. Let's see here.
Get a time limit.
What's our Wi-Fi in Victoria?
We're checking to see if the site connection is secure.
If they have the paper, at least.
I'm gonna have it on my gadget here.
I have it on my iPad. I'm fine.
Okay, does anyone have good Wi-Fi in Victoria?
I do.
What do you have?
MediaCom.
So the interesting thing,
Jaguar is pretty good. If you-
Yeah, Jaguar, if you're close to
think
the
they're in
street,
my
we're too
area.
far inside the development. They haven't came in yet. But we really have no,
Bought out, Jaguar.
yeah, we have no problem. Like, we have fast, good internet. I don't know. We probably pay more than everyone else. That's what I think.
25 years ago, I still call it Jaguar.
We'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
I suspect
I
that's the case.
I knew it got bought, but I didn't know the name of it. Are we on air?
I don't know if that's sound or not.
You'll want to assume that you're on air, even though he said that you're not.
We'll give you gentlemen all the time that you need.
Bathroom break?
Chair, if you want to make a brief recess, if folks do want to use the bathroom, now would be a great time to do that. I know that was a suggestion, but
I suppose.
okay. So
And they have, you guys all have a copy?
I have
does everyone have?
my iPad. Everybody keeps looking on their phones or copy. Does anyone need it?
Okay. I'm getting nods to move forward, so that's what I'm going to do. So the revised site plan was provided in the staff report, as I said. You'll see the main change is, again, continuing Catkin Way further to the west. The developer was able to make these street alignment changes without sacrificing many units. I think maybe one unit was sacrificed in the in this one from the previous site plan. So that this development is still providing those critical street connections. Again, Catkin Way providing that connection to those parcels to the west. Topographically, it's really challenging to serve those sites with access. I would also note that the county's access spacing requirements might preclude direct access for those parcels west of this one to Marsh Lake Road. So that is why it is so critical to provide that extension. I'd also note that Red Fox Drive is a collector, and so it is a priority to connect Red Fox Drive down to Marsh Lake Road to kind of complete the city's street system in that area. You'll see that similar to the last site plan, there are some wetlands on the site right now. The developer is seeking to kind of minimize the required mitigation for those wetlands by routing Red Fox Drive kind of around that larger wetland on the site. And then there is one wetland that is proposed to be filled on with one of the residential lots. So I'm going to scroll here through my presentation, just make sure that I'm not missing any points for you. Also, I just note that the existing conditions of this site, we've got historically and still to this day agricultural use on the property. I would just also note that there's not a ton of trees on this property, and we would get to that tree or woodland preservation review at a later stage of development process. The city's 2040 comprehensive plan guides this site for low density residential and a density range of 2.25 to 6 units per acre. This development is coming in at about 2.3 units per acre, so it would meet that minimum requirement. Looking at the concept data that was provided on the site plan, a nice breakdown for you. Again, about 12 acres of property here. You've got right-of-way taking up about 1 acre. Delineated wetland at about 1.4 acres. So that leaves us with a net developable area of about 9.6 acres. Significant ponding is proposed on site to satisfy stormwater needs. And just generally speaking, looking at the site, we're located in not only the R1 district, but staff have also confirmed the presence within the Shoreland Overlay District. And so what that means for this project is, number one, it impacts the actual process administratively. Properties that are within the Shoreland Overlay are reviewed by the DNR, so that's one of the impacts. Properties that are within the Shoreland Overlay cannot exceed 25% impervious. That is an important thing to note, because one of the things the developer is seeking is a deviation to go over 25% for the lots. The thing in the staff report kind of broke down is looking at the site on the aggregate. It does appear that it may be in the area of about 25% impervious surface with full build out of all these lots, including a right-of-way, sidewalks, trails, the building pads themselves, driveways. I think I mentioned that one. So that's what we're currently looking at as staff. We'll be making sure that we're kind of dialing in a review of that specific request and making sure that more information is provided at a future development stage, but wanted to note that for you this evening for your comments. There's also an open space requirement for properties in the shoreline overlay, those that receive PUDs. And so we're potentially looking at a request to go lower than 50%. Looks like we're in the neighborhood of about, I think, 30% open space on the site. And when considering deviations to various standards, one of the things you have to review is what's the public benefit for the flexibility that you'd be potentially giving the developer. In this case, the public benefit would be definitely a critical roadway connection. I would also mention that utilities could be extended through Red Fox Drive, including a loop of the water system, which is a really important part of this specific project. One thing to note for you is you'll notice the buffers that are located on the southern or east-west part of the site along Marsh Lake Road. Those buffers do meet the city's standards in terms of distance of those properties from the Marsh Lake Road, and they include that 40-foot setback that's kind of required by the city's code there, and then also the 15-foot buffers from the lots that are immediately at that intersection of Marsh Lake Road and Red Fox Drive. Buffer plantings and berms would be required per code in those areas as well. So I've kind of made some notes here on transportation and access already. We've talked about the Red Fox Drive and Catkin Way connection. I would mention to you as well that trails and sidewalks are proposed in this development. They are consistent with the surrounding development and the expectation for connectivity through this one. So there is a trail proposed on the west side of Red Fox Drive that would connect in with the existing trail system, and then sidewalk on the north side of Catkin Way. That would be extended from the existing location all the way to the west side of this project. So connecting trails and sidewalks as well. A quick note on park dedication for you. So I did note that this is in a search area for a park, but given the location of this property relative to that search area and relative to other existing community parks, it seems like the best way to manage the parkland dedication for this project, given the constraints in the shoreline overlay, would be to accept a cash in lieu fee for park dedication and focus efforts on park location in this search area south of Marsh Lake Road for future development that may need to be served by a park. This development would have pretty direct trail connection to existing park facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So just making sure that I've covered everything on utilities and stormwater. I don't know if Kara has any comments to that end. We did have a neighborhood meeting, and we had far fewer attendees than the first item this evening. I think we may have had one resident who was just curious about what was going on, and so I believe that they had their questions answered. We also had the representative for Marsh Lake Hunt Club in attendance at that meeting as well, just talking to the developer about obviously having development right next to the Marsh Lake Hunt Club. But I think that, again, most questions and concerns have been addressed at least to this point. So staff recommendation is really to discuss this one and give feedback to the developer, looking at a conversation perhaps about proposed lot standards. We can get into the table that was provided in the staff report too. I tried to highlight those areas where they're requesting deviations. I would just note on that, those deviations that are being requested are now more or less in line with other similar developments in the area. Notably, the side yard setback was increased from what was initially proposed to 8 feet, which is more in line with the city's more recent approvals. Again, the impervious surface is something that should be discussed. And And then the shoreline overlay open space requirement is also something that might be of your interest to discuss. But other than that, just generally any feedback that you have for the developer would be appreciated. So that's all I have for you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Nathan. Does the developer have a presentation for us?
Commissioners, I'll be brief because you were all here the last time, and I won't rehash all those details, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be back in front of you this evening and appreciate staff's assistance in helping to try to move this forward. So as Nathan mentioned, we are addressing the connection to the west that was discussed at our last meeting. We've also increased the lot width to be able to accommodate the 8-foot setbacks that you expressed as a concern last time with our plan. We're also providing better access to the stormwater pond, which I think was a concern also. And then I know the city engineers had some discussion both with us as well as the Hunt Club on that access point on Marsh Lake Road, just to make sure that that's going to coordinate with their future plans. So with that, Chair, Commissioners, I'm happy to answer any questions, but we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns?
My question's about the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and is this within Chaska's too, or not?
Just Minnehaha Creek.
So the 44% impervious surface issue, which doesn't meet our code, do they have the power to shut this down, or do we if we say it goes, it goes? I don't know the rules on that.
Yeah, Commissioner Pedersen, the Watershed District wouldn't have any input on the impervious surface that would be allowed. What they'll look at is to make sure that the stormwater management plan is designed to accommodate whatever the proposed impervious is.
Thank you.
How about the DNR? Do they have any control?
That's Commissioner and Chair and Commission, that's a great question as well. The city has land use control over this property, so it's the city's shoreland ordinance that it would be granting that variance or deviation rather from. So the DNR has the ability to comment on the project. Certainly through the process, the city has the final land use control through the development process.
So then, just to clarify that, so I got that right, because it's proposed to be a higher impervious, whatever the storm management plan that would be developed as a result of expecting more faster runoff, being able to capture.
Yeah, they'll design their stormwater plan consistent with what their proposed improvement.
And the city, in just to cover kind of more ground on the question about impervious, the city will have to adopt findings of fact that support the public benefit for why that flexibility is needed, and that would certainly be something that is important as far as making sure that it's properly administrating its shoreland ordinance. So there is a provision within the shoreline ordinance that does provide for PUDs.
The other thing, if I might, I don't know whether Nathan covered this or not, but in addition to the red fox this is really a key collector for the city, and having an opportunity to get that completed is really important. But they're also dedicating 75 feet of right-of-way along Marsh Lake Road for the future county road that someday will be constructed along that corridor. So that's also being dedicated as well, which is noteworthy.
If I remember correctly, this is a lot tighter, and there's a cul-de-sac, and there's some other things that were going on here last time. Is that correct? I think you guys have done an awesome job of. There it is. God, you've got it all. You're way more prepared.
He likes paper.
I guess my only question really on well, I'd have two, would be like, we know that with this new design, does it fit with the rest of Catkin Way and the rest of the houses? I'm assuming yes, but I think it should go on the record to be asked.
Yeah, to your question on the design of these lots, they are consistent with those lots that are east on Catkin Way.
Gotcha. So we don't have like 12-foot side yard setbacks on the other side of Catkin. They're more like 7.5, 8, maybe 10.
My understanding is it has the same standards proposed for it as those. I don't know if the developer has additional information on that, but that would be my understanding that those are similar.
Okay. Ignorance time. What is estimated wet fill underneath house number 1?
Yeah, so it's not uncommon for there to be wetland fill on a project. this lot, as well as any of the other ones, will have, geotech folks out there reviewing, making sure it's on engineered fill and that any structures are gonna be sound. So it's not unusual, this one's a fairly small wetland, but it's not unusual to excavate that out and bring in engineered fill to make it buildable.
Okay. Never seen it before.
At the end of that, are you gonna leave those lots for cul-de-sac or at the end of that Catkin Way to the east or to the west?
Commissioner, are you asking about a temporary cul-de-sac of some nature, or?
Yes.
We would propose to meet city standards, whatever that would be. Typically, if we can fit a temporary cul-de-sac in or a hammerhead or something to allow for emergency vehicle turnaround and still not have lots that are unbuildable, that would be.
Right. I'm thinking for public works or.
Right.
Yeah, typically we'd require a temporary cul-de-sac at an end of a road like this, and they do have one kind of ghosted in their concept. We tend to wait to dial into that detail till the engineering's done to see what the best fit layout is for that, with the hope of being able to have those lots remain buildable even in the temporary condition.
And Chair, if I could add, I think the staff report alludes to the idea that when we get into details on the impervious coverage, maybe we try to identify a square footage as opposed to a percentage. And based on experience in my previous life, I know that having a percentage when you're looking at these lots gets really cumbersome. So we would support that idea, and we can certainly provide more detail once we have a better understanding of proposed home styles on this site.
Excellent. Yeah, any other thoughts, any other concerns?
I have two, just questions more than anything. So, can we comment a little bit about how the pond is going to be maintained? Like what kind of schedule that would be maintained by the city?
Sure. So that basin will be added to the city's stormwater maintenance schedule, consistent with all of the 85, I don't know, I haven't counted yet this year how many we're up to. So what happens is the ponds do get inspected on a rotating basis over a period of 5 years. The city tries to inspect all of them within that period of time. And then we'll program, more routine minor maintenance like cleaning of the inlets and the outlets and any sort of work in that area. We haven't embarked on any massive rebuilding of any stormwater ponds yet, other than we did do some work on the Swiss Mountain Basin a couple of years ago. But yeah, we do have a routine schedule for that.
Okay. And then it's noted that the driveways were prohibited from connecting on Marsh Lake, hunting farm or whatever lodge with this development. Can you comment as to why they didn't connect?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I'm not sure I'm following the question.
Yeah, so it says the driveways are prohibited from connecting to the collector, which is reflected in the concept. I'm assuming that comment means this connecting with the entrance to Marsh Lake.
Chair and Commission, I think I have an answer to that question. So the collector, Red Fox is a collector road, and the city does not allow for driveways to be for access for residential properties to connect, because it's a higher volume road.
I misread that. Okay.
Right, removing those instances where
Okay.
accidents could occur.
So in our last meeting, we had requested that somehow these entry points connect, and they're not doing that at this time. Is there a reason? Is it gonna not be done?
So generally, the alignment of Red Fox is consistent with what our collector standards are for a state aid route. The access to the Hunt Club is really a secondary field road access. It isn't their primary access. So we, typically we look for access points to align, but in this kind of developing condition, I don't have any safety concerns with the offset between those locations. When the road gets improved somewhere down the road, We may, as part of an improvement project, align those, and there does appear to be adequate room to do that. But, you know, realistically, until the Hunt Club property develops, at that point, Red Fox will continue through to the south through that whole property. So I did, you know, chat with the operator, what do I want to call Sean? Club manager, just to have a little bit better understanding of the use of that access, and didn't want to introduce some additional curves necessarily into Red Fox for a lower used access point.
Makes sense. Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Anything else? Again, this is a step before the preliminary at the same time, so this will be revisited, and I suspect in a relatively short period of time. And any other comments that you'd like, any other thoughts, closing thoughts to us?
No, I appreciate your consideration, and we hope to be back in front of you here not too far away.
Okay, excellent, superb. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. We will now close this item. Moving on to miscellaneous section of our agenda. So this I had prepared for the January 3rd meeting that got snowed out, and it's to wish everyone a Happy New Year. And it's been a real joy, a belated Happy New Year. Been a real joy, real privilege to work with everyone. And I think we have a busy 2023 coming up and continuing. I think there's all sorts of things in motion. So it's been a real joy working with Nathan also, and had reviewed a number of these things in the process. Jen, thank you very much. Kara, thank you. The staff, any other things?
None from staff.
One of the things that we do need is a schedule for attendance for city council. Let me take a look at.
Do you want mine from 12:12?
Yes.
No.
It was like a 3-hour meeting.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was long.
You have an hour and a half.
So I don't even remember it, but I'm gonna hit the high points.
I'll tell you about.
6.1 street improvement. This was a presentation given by Kara. Basically think of where the cabinet maker is. There was a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be fixed over there, and there's all sorts of assessments, and everybody's property taxes are going up. And so this place was filled with people complaining about that. Voicing their concerns. So at the end of the day, that needed a supermajority to pass, and it passed 5-0, so they are improving that area of the street. Tricia got up and talked about taxation. Again, lots of people were voicing their concerns with increases on taxation and where all the money was going. Then they reviewed the ordinance for the fee schedules for all the various things that you have to get charged upon for living in the city. That passed 5-0. Item number 6.5 was adopting the Arboretum area transportation information. That was discussed and passed, and hopefully that will happen at some point in time. That's all dependent on MnDOT. Got into a bunch of different stuff about the Met Council, and item 6.6 was Dana's review, which is closed, and they kicked me out. I wanted to stay for it, but they said no. So anyway, that also ends the show. It was a lot longer than that, but that's as fast as I could be.
Well,
That was pretty quick.
well condensed.
I appreciate. Well,
Pretty good, right? You were there.
Who was there?
That's it.
That's great.
Happy.
I was on 12:27, but I believe it was canceled if the website was correct. 3 hours canceled. I think I won.
It probably wasn't 3. It's probably
I'd like to ask a
2:25.
question. And it's kind of unrelated to city council, so I don't want to jump in and ask the question.
And that's
until-
okay.
Until we're done with this topic. Are we done with city council?
We're done.
Okay, so I wanted to ask this question during the presentation by Roers, but I found it incredibly rude. Have we had other developers come to the table that have less units interested in Leuthner site?
Not that has been proposed that I have seen since I've been here.
I've never seen a proposal on Leuthner's site.
And I'm just curious if it's because of the way they've packaged this site. You know, it's.
I know there was interest in the property and the owners have been going back and forth, but that's all that we've been told. And then this is the first project to come out of that property.
It's interesting. Has Roers already bought their land?
I can't confirm. I know they were working on a purchase agreement a few months ago.
I believe they bought it already, which is fascinating and really good to know. It tells me that they might be open to something less than 4 stories, if that's our position. So, anyway, my thoughts.
Well, the developer certainly has quite a background. At the same time, seemed to be very, very open to any and all. I guess if I were a developer, I certainly would be at the same time. But seem to have, I think your comments on appearance, it doesn't really flow, does it? And I would guess that at our next meeting, we may see something different.
I will tell you, when Tom, the resident, spoke, he really, I resonate with what he had to share, big time, because our CBD is precious. What do our residents want? They do want amenities.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a huge chunk of it. So I'm conflicted, I'm not gonna lie. So that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think your thoughts, I think you represent thoughts of a lot of people, quite frankly. Yeah, the initial configuration, it needs some work. And it needs some configuration. I think coming in on Roes, it can, I don't know exactly how you reconfigure all of that at the same time to make it work. But again, that's not our problem. That's the developer's problem. That's staff's problem at the same time.
It'd be nice if we could get some sort of poll, like what amenities does the public want? I mean, obviously they want a grocery store, but what, a CBD store? I don't know.
We have one.
We do.
That's the cigar store.
Cigar shop. Sorry, we do have one.
Just to remind you, there is a community survey right now on our website, so please take it, please share it. That's what we're trying to do right now, is gather that information for not just downtown West, but for the community as a whole.
That's the thing, there's 3 or 4 of these larger unit things are all happening concurrent, and each one of them is kind of missing a retail component, because it's the chicken and egg. You have to have some density to be able to justify a grocery store.
This is the only one that has true retail within it, because Gannon said he's just gonna keep his cars there. Maybe it'll be retail at some point. And no one else has it. But 4,500 square foot is not very much. It's maybe 2 small shops. It's probably Tazzy and the dry cleaner. Maybe
I'd love
I would love this to swap with the Hometown Bank and Mocha Monkey, and they build this over there, and Hometown Bank move over here. But
I kind of agree.
But I don't know where that's at, or that's just my gut feeling that.
Agree.
That.
I like that. Yeah.
I love the idea of the density being on the south side of 5, because most people go east. So the natural right of way is just a cleaner traffic solution.
But I know he's in love with that spot, so that's just my personal And I don't know, I mean, I always thought that spot there would be ideal for a bank corner and strip mall, coffee shop.
Didn't we see a plan with like a realtor in there one time?
That's who owns it.
I was gonna say, it's been a while.
On the corner.
On the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where they have their amenities.
Where the Floyd's overflow parking
Overflow
is.
parking, yeah. Can't remember.
Cara, can you comment about the soils? We kind of danced and flirted around that topic today, but where I believe, from what I've been told, where the bad soils are is where the surface lot is. And you can typically kind of solve that problem just like kind of fixing it up a little bit and then paving it. Is that correct?
It really depends on what the contaminated soils are. Generally, once you disturb them, you have to dispose of them properly. But if they're, if they're building a building over it, then they're gonna need engineered soils underneath it. So it really depends on the specifics. But, generally, if you don't disturb them, you can pave over them. But if you do, you've got to remove them. Only the part that you disturb, so
Okay.
it's manageable.
How do you test it without disturbing it?
You can do testing. It's just if you start to move the soil or excavate it.
But they do quarrying, don't they?
Yeah.
You soil bores.
Yep.
Yep. Anything else? With nothing else, I would call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Productive meeting.